Near Manchester, Maryland, July 1st, 1863. We have been doing some fine marching for the past few days, making an average of 20 miles per day. We reached this place last night and expect to move this morning. We have not passed through the town as yet. It appears to be a fine little city, and as it is only 2 miles away, I hope to be able to see it. Westminster is the finest place I have seen yet. We passed through its streets yesterday. The rebel cavalry moved out one side as we entered the other. The country is beautiful and the people are very kind to us and appear glad to see us. Young ladies stand at the gates and furnish the men with cold water and loaves of bread as we pass. It has rained for a week and the roads are muddy. After marching for 20 miles, it is not pleasant to lie down at night in the wet without any cover. I am tired. In fact, I never was so tired in my life. But hurrah, it is all for the Union. At New Market, we halted for 2 hours, and with a party of officers, I went into town. Some ladies made us a lot of bread and showed us much attention. It is entirely different from our treatment in Virginia. Pleasant farms are to be seen on every side, and the people stand on the roadside to see the troops pass. We are quite near to the Pennsylvania line, and it looks now as if we were to cross over. I am still in good health and spirits, and have faith that God will guide us on to final victory. The rebellion must be put down, and we are doing our best. Middletown, Maryland, July 8, 1863. The great battle of the war has been fought, and thanks be to God, the Army of the Potomac has been victorious at last. But how can I describe the exciting events of the past few days? On the night of July 1st, we were in camp near Manchester, Maryland. Rumors of fighting in Pennsylvania had been heard all day, but the distance was so great to the battlefield that we knew little about it. The men were tired and hungry and lay down to rest early in the evening. At 9 o'clock, orders came for us to move, and we, in great haste, packed up and started on the road toward Pennsylvania. General Hooker has been relieved, and General George G. Meade of Pennsylvania assigned to the command of the Army of the Potomac. What does it all mean? Well, it is none of our affairs, and we obey orders and march out into the road. We struggle on through the night, the men almost dead for lack of sleep and falling over their own shadows. But still, we go on in the warm summer night. Little is said by anyone, for we were too weary to talk. Only now and then an officer sharply orders the men to close up. Sometimes the column would halt for a moment, as obstructions were met in the advance, and then we would run to catch up. Daylight brought no halt, and what little hard bread we had was taken from the haversacks and eaten as we marched on. On the morning of July 2nd, we heard the firing in front, and then we understood the reason for such great haste. I was taken sick upon the road and fell helpless to the ground. The surgeon, Dr. Carr, gave me a remedy and a pass for admittance to an ambulance. I lay upon the roadside until several regiments had passed, when I began to revive. I immediately hurried on and soon came up with my Company B. The boys received me well, and I went on without further trouble. The firing in our front grew loud and more distinct, and soon we met the poor wounded fellows being carried to the rear. At a place called Littlestown, we saw large numbers of our wounded men, and all kinds of carriages were being used to take them to the hospitals. At about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we reached the battlefield of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, having made a march of 34 miles without a halt. The men threw themselves upon the ground, exhausted, but were soon ordered forward. We followed the road, blocked with troops and trains, until 4 o'clock, when the field of battle with the long lines of struggling, weary soldiers burst upon us. With loud cheers, the old 6th Corps took up the double quick and were soon in line of battle near the left of the main line held by the 5th Corps. The 5th Corps were in reserve, but as we took their place, they moved forward and took part in the fight. Our division was finally sent to the front and relieved General Sykes's division of regulars. Picket firing was kept up until long after dark, when we were relieved and returned a short distance. The men threw themselves upon the ground, and oblivious to the dead and dying around us, we slept the sleep of the weary. July 3rd, 1863. This morning the troops were under arms before light and ready for the great battle that we knew must be fought. The firing began, and our brigade was hurried to the right of the line to reinforce it. While not in the front line, yet we were constantly exposed to the fire of the rebel artillery, while bullets fell around us. We moved from point to point, wherever danger seemed to be imminent, until noon, when we were ordered to report to the line held by General Birney. Our brigade marched down the road until we reached the house used by General Meade as headquarters. The road ran between ledges of rocks, while the fields were strewn with boulders. To our left was a hill on which we had many batteries posted. Just as we reached General Meade's headquarters, a shell burst over our heads, and it was immediately followed by showers of iron. More than 200 guns were belching forth their thunder, and most of the shells that came over the hill struck in the road on which our brigade was moving. Solid shot would strike the large rocks and split them as if exploded by gunpowder. The flying iron and pieces of stone struck men down in every direction. It is said that this fire continued for about 2 hours, but I have no idea of the time. We could not see the enemy, and we could only cover ourselves the best we could behind the rocks and trees. About 30 men of our brigade were killed or wounded by this fire. Soon the rebel yell was heard, and we have found since that the rebel General Pickett made a charge with his division and was repulsed after reaching some of our batteries. Our lines of infantry in front of us rose up and poured in a terrible fire. As we were only a few yards in rear of our lines, we saw all the fight. The firing gradually died away, and but for an occasional shot, all was still. But what a scene it was! Oh, the dead and the dying on this bloody field. The 2nd Rhode Island lost only 1 man killed and 5 wounded. One of the latter belonged to my Company B. Again night came upon us, and again we slept amid the dead and dying. July 4th, 1863. Was ever the nation's birthday celebrated in such a way before? This morning the 2nd Rhode Island was sent out to the front and found that during the night General Lee and his rebel army had fallen back. It was impossible to march across the field without stepping upon dead or wounded men, while horses and broken artillery lay on every side. We advanced to a sunken road, Emmitsburg Road, where we deployed as skirmishers and lay down behind a bank of earth. Verdon's sharpshooters joined us, and we passed the day firing upon any rebels that showed themselves. At 12 noon, a national salute with shotted guns was fired from several of our batteries, and the shells passed over our heads toward the rebel lines. At night, we were relieved and went to the rear for a little rest and sleep. July 5th, 1863. Glorious news! We have won the victory, thank God, and the rebel army is fleeing to Virginia. We have news that Vicksburg has fallen. We have thousands of prisoners, and they seem to be stupefied with the news. This morning, our corps, the 6th, started in pursuit of Lee's army. We have had rain, and the roads are bad, so we move slow. Every house we see is a hospital, and the road is covered with the arms and equipment thrown away by the rebels. July 6th, 1863. Today we have slowly continued the pursuit, passing through Fairfield and Liberty and encamping at Emmitsburg. Everything denotes that Lee is trying to cross the Potomac. I hope we shall catch him before he reaches Virginia. July 7th, 1863. We are still on the road, and today passed through Franklin's Mills, Mechanicsville, and Catoctin Iron Works. Now the people stare at us as we march past. July 8th, 1863. We crossed the Catoctin Mountain this evening. It took us from dark until 2 o'clock in the morning on the 9th to reach the summit. a distance of about 3 miles. In some places the mountain was very steep, and we could only crawl along. Here we were obliged to halt our brigade, for the men were used up and could go no further. July 9th, 1863. We left the top of the mountain early this morning and marched down to Middletown, Maryland, where we are now resting. Few hours of sleep in 24 for about 3 weeks. Again, I thank God that the Army of the Potomac has at last gained a victory. I wonder what the South thinks of us Yankees now. I think Gettysburg will cure the rebels of any desire to invade the North again. Near Funkstown, Maryland, July 11th, 1863. We arrived here today after crossing the South Mountain and passing through Boonesboro. Yesterday, our artillery had a fight with the rebels, but it is quiet now. We are about 14 miles from Hagerstown, where the rebel army is said to have halted. I do not see how they can escape us this time. Everybody except the rebels is in good spirits, and they must feel lonesome after their defeat. Today I had a luxury, some new bread and butter. It was very good. Our army is very tired and ragged, but we know that if we can destroy Lee's army now, the war is over. This keeps us up to our work. Now is the time for the North to wake up and send men into the army. Line of battle near Hagerstown, Maryland, July 13th, 1863. I have not changed my clothes for 5 weeks, but still I am happy and we are doing good work. Last night we had a skirmish and the 2nd Rhode Island lost 3 men, one of them from my Company B. My poor little company will soon be gone if we do not get recruits. We are now entrenched and are waiting for orders. General Meade is popular with the troops, as all generals would be if they would only lead us to victory. We are expecting a fight here, as Lee's army is not far off. I do not understand our movements, but suppose them to be all right. Time will show, however. Boonesboro, Maryland, July 15th, 1863. Yesterday the whole army moved upon the rebels' works near Hagerstown, but the enemy had fled. We followed to Williamsport, Maryland, where we caught about 1,500 prisoners who were unable to cross the river. It is said that we are to go to Berlin, where we crossed last year, and go into Virginia again. At last the northern soil is free from rebels, and great must be the rejoicing at home. Good news again. Port Hudson has fallen. Well, now enforce the draft, and we shall be all right. I wish they would send the 2nd Rhode Island to New York City. The riots in that city are a disgrace to the nation and ought to be suppressed at any cost of money or life. Berlin, Maryland, July the 17th, 1863. Yesterday we again crossed the South Mountain and, marching through the town of Burkittsville, reached this place, which is where we crossed the Potomac last year. A pontoon bridge has been laid, and we shall soon cross into Virginia. Berlin, Maryland, July 19th, 1863. I shall regret to leave Maryland, for the country is delightful. I am almost tempted to turn farmer and move to this state. We are busy today making out our muster and payrolls. Some day we expect to be paid off. I hear that I have been drafted. Well, this is a good joke after serving for over 2 years, and as an officer also. I hardly think I shall report as ordered. Someone in Rhode Island is very careless to put in the names of men already in the army. I hope we shall get some recruits soon, for I want 37 in my Company B. An incident of the Battle of Gettysburg should be told. A colonel of a Georgia rebel regiment was found dead upon the field. Captain Thomas Foy of our regiment discovered in some way that the colonel was a Mason, and with the assistance of some other Masons, buried him. As I am not a Mason, I do not understand the matter. While the burial was going on, the skirmishers were constantly firing. Captain Thomas Foy, July 19th, 1863, again in Virginia. We crossed the river this afternoon and marched to this place, which is called Wheatland. Here we shall camp for the night. July 20th, 1863. on the road again today, and tonight we are in camp at Philemont. July 22nd, 1863, we have reached this place called Uniontown. But why Uniontown, no one can tell. Here we expect to pass the night. July 23rd, 1863. This day we marched to Rectortown and halted, but at 2 o'clock in the afternoon we started for Manassas Gap. The scenery was fine, and in spite of the heat, I enjoyed the march. Near Warrington, Virginia, July 25th, 1863. We arrived here yesterday, rather used up. For 2 days we have had no food except berries. On halting last night, we found high blackberries, very plentiful, and everybody ate their fill. They were good too, for we were nearly starved. It is reported that we are to remain here for a few days and receive clothing for the men, which is much needed. Camp near Warrington, Virginia, July 27th, 1863. The notice that I was drafted has been received and has caused much merriment. I, for the fun of the thing, showed it to the Colonel, Rogers, and asked permission to report at New Haven. The Colonel said he could not see it. Captain William B. Sears, Lieutenant Charles A. Waldron, and Lieutenant Charles F. Brown have been ordered to New Haven to take charge of drafted men. It is pleasant to be in camp again where we can sleep nights without expecting to be called out at daylight, as we have done for the past month. Warrington is about 2 miles away and in sight. I have not visited the town yet. I enjoyed the trip to Manassas Gap very much. It is the most romantic place I ever saw. The mountains are very high and form a circle or basin in which is located the town of Markham. We only stopped there about 2 hours and then marched to this place. Our camp is in a valley between 2 very high hills, and the slopes are covered with fine blackberries. We live on them now, for we have had nothing to eat except hard bread and salt pork for several weeks. The weather is hot, and several men have been sunstruck. The 37th Massachusetts Regiment has lost several. This is a new regiment in our brigade and is called the Ironclads, because when they first arrived, every man had a steel plate in his vest. But the first march disposed of the plates, for the men threw them away, and our men picked them up and used them to fry pork in. Some Massachusetts man presented them to the 37th. Camp at Warrington, Virginia, August 1863. The month of August was passed very quietly in camp near the town of Warrington. Clothing and camp equipage were issued to the troops, and regular drills and parades that had long been omitted were held. Picket duty in the direction of Culpeper was performed, and as the season was warm, the men enjoyed the life. One day, Company B, while on picket, discovered a cider mill in an orchard, and apples being plenty, the mill was put into operation and the canteens filled with cider. At night, I was ordered to retire the picket line to a more defensive position, and a new line was established some half-mile in rear of the orchard, and the cider mill could be heard running for their benefit. My Company B built me a fine house of stone and put on a canvas roof. I am now keeping house in good style. Visits to Warrington were frequent, and the officers on Sunday attended church in that town. About the middle of August, I received news from Rhode Island that my brother James D. Rhodes was seriously sick and liable to die. As he was constantly calling for me, it was thought by the attending physician that my presence would be beneficial. I applied for a leave of absence for 10 days, which was granted August 19th. I went over to Warrington early in the morning and rode down to Warrington Junction on a locomotive, where I took the cars for Washington. My brother being pronounced out of danger, I returned to the regiment, reaching camp early in September. Nothing of special interest had occurred during my absence, and I at once assumed command of Company B. While at home, I had little opportunity to visit my friends. Being detained at the bedside of my brother, I returned with a thankful heart that God had spared his life. Camp near Warrington, Virginia, September 6th, 1863. We are having considerable religious interest in our regiment, and I pray God that it may continue. Soldiers are not the worst men in the world, but they are very careless in regard to matters of religion. We have had no chaplain for many months, and consequently, no regular services. Our last chaplain never did any good in the regiment. About 3 weeks ago, 3 of our men, who are Christians, attended a religious meeting at one of the camps in General Wheaton's brigade. On the way home, they kneeled down in the woods and prayed that God bless our regiment. The next week, 6 of them met for prayer, and last week about 30 were present. Tonight, I was invited to join them. I accepted and made an address. About 50 men were present at first, but they soon began to come into the grove. And soon nearly every officer and man of our regiment was listening to the service. I never saw such a prayer meeting before, and I know the Spirit of the Lord was with us. The chaplain of the 1st Rhode Island Cavalry, Reverend Ethan Ray Clark, came over and addressed the meeting. Colonel Rogers is a Christian man, and his words of counsel and advice are always welcomed. Frank S. Halliday, son of Reverend S. B. Halliday, is one of our active men in religious matters. We have made seats by splitting long logs in halves and hewing them smooth, and our little grove arranged for service is, I believe, the temple of the Lord. May God help us and bless our regiment. I have attended church today in Warrington. The sermon was good, but had a little too much treason in it to suit us Union men. I saw in the audience a rebel major in his gray uniform trimmed with gold. He is a surgeon on parole and is in charge of the rebel wounded. The ladies present did not seem to be particularly pleased with our party. Frank S. Halliday, Camp near Warrington, Virginia, Sunday, September 12, 1863. We have had a Sunday school this morning, and the Bible study was well attended by the men. We hope to have a chaplain soon. Heavy cannonading can be heard in the distance, but we do not know what it means. It has rained hard all day. September 16, 1863. Yesterday we left our pleasant camp near Warrington and moved to the vicinity of Culpeper Courthouse, where we are now in camp. Camp Sedgwick near Culpeper, Virginia, Sunday, September 27, 1863. This is a beautiful day with weather just right. We have had a quiet week with nothing of importance to report. Culpeper Courthouse is about 4 miles to the left of our camp, while to the right and in front of us we have high ranges of mountains with deep blue peaks. Cedar Mountain is about 5 miles distant. Yesterday, some Union cavalry passed our camp carrying a rebel flag captured in a fight the night before. Soon after, a rebel officer under a guard of blue jackets went past. On our march to this place, we passed through the village or town of Sulphur Springs, which before the war was a famous summer resort. Traces of its glory and beauty can still be seen in the ruined and blackened walls of its hotels. We did not stop long enough to visit the famous springs. This camp is named in honor of Major General Sedgwick, the commander of the 6th Army Corps. He is very popular with the men, and whenever he appears, loud cheers are given for Uncle John, as he is familiarly called by the soldiers. He seems to like the title and always greets us pleasantly. Saturday, October 2nd, 1863, Belton, Virginia. Last night, we left our camp near Culpeper and made a night march to this place, which is on the railroad to Washington. It is raining and rather unpleasant marching. Bristo Station, Virginia, October 5th, 1863. Saturday, our brigade, under command of Brigadier General Henry L. Eustis, formerly colonel of the 10th Massachusetts Volunteers, left Belton and marched to this place. We are now on the railroad and about 30 miles from Alexandria. It is reported that we are to guard the railroad. If this is true, it will be the first duty of this kind performed by the 2nd Rhode Island Volunteers. I am busy trying to boss some men who are building me a house, or shebang, as we call them. Camp at Bristo Station, Virginia, October 7th, 1863. Our new chaplain is Reverend John D. Buglas, formerly pastor of the Pawtuxet Baptist Church. It came about in this way. I have been urging upon the officers the importance of having a chaplain. Some of the officers were opposed and were afraid that we might get another man like Jameson. The captains or company commanders have the right under the law to elect a chaplain and recommend that he be commissioned. A meeting was held at the colonel's quarters on September 7th, and after much talk, I nominated Mr. Buglas. He is unknown to all the officers except myself, but they voted for him, and the governor has issued to him a commission. The chaplain arrived while we were at Culpeper, and as he came after dark, he found many of the men in a grove holding a prayer meeting. I took him down to the woods and introduced him to the men. The chaplain made a short address and then shook hands all around. At the first dress parade, the colonel introduced him to the regiment. He has already made himself very popular, and I trust that God will bless his labors and that he will do much good. There are plenty of opportunities for Christian work in the Army, but the trouble seems to be a lack of earnestness. Many of the soldiers are good Christian men, but need someone to guide them. I feel greatly rejoiced over the prospect for the future. Camp near Bristo Station, Virginia, October 7th, 1863. I have got the best hotel that a soldier ever lived in. Last Monday morning, I took my company and a 6-mule team and went into the country on a foraging expedition. After marching about 3 miles, we came to the village of Brentville. I placed guards about the town to prevent being surprised by guerrillas and then marched down the main street. Chaplain Buglas went on the trip with me. The town is deserted by all the white people and left to the care of the Negroes. One house in process of building is owned by the rebel General Hunting. Here I loaded our wagon with boards, doors, and windows and started back to camp. Since then, the men have built me a house. It is 18 feet long, 10 feet wide, and the peak is 12 feet high. On one side, I have a window and another in the door, with curtains for each. One of my men found me a desk, so I am living in style. All of the officers have built quarters, and it looks now as if we were to stay here during the winter and guard the railroad. I hope so, for this is the first easy duty we have ever had, and we need rest. There is some talk of sending the 2nd Rhode Island home for the winter. They will do so if one half of the officers and men will agree to stay in service 3 years after our present term expires. The United States offers a furlough of 30 days and a bounty of $400 to every enlisted man who will re-enlist. I hope that we shall decide to remain, for I could not be contented at home if mustered out, and should rather be in the 2nd Rhode Island Volunteers than seek service in any other regiment. I want to remain and see the end of the war. We had a very good meeting last night, and much interest was shown. Bristo Station, October 10th, 1863. I have just returned from the camp of the 10th Massachusetts Volunteers, where the officers of the brigade had a social meeting. Today there has been fighting on the Rappahannock River, but we are too far in the rear to know much about it. It is rumored that our corps, 6th, has been engaged. We are all ready for a move. About 1/2 of our regiment is on picket daily, and we have more work to do than when we were at the front, but the danger is less. Captain S.H. Brown and company are guarding a bridge about 4 miles from camp, so for the present, our mess is broken up. Bristo Station, Virginia, October 11th, 1863, still on guard duty. The enemy does not molest us. Only pretty girls with pies for sale invade our camp. Line of battle, Chantilly Crossroads, October 16th, 1863. The Army of the Potomac has again skedaddled to the rear, and we are now again near Centerville, waiting for Lee's army to come up and show fight. Last Tuesday morning before light, we left our comfortable camp at Bristo Station and marched to Warrington Junction, where we joined the 1st Corps, who were covering the retreat of the army trains. At dark, we started with this corps to the rear, leaving the 2nd Corps as a rear guard. After marching all night, we reached Catlett Station, having made only 5 miles by reason of the roads being blocked with wagons. The night was bitter cold, and the men suffered severely. After sleeping 2 hours, we moved on and crossed the Manassas Plain battlefield and the Bull Run and arrived at Centerville more dead than alive. The 2nd Corps had a fight in our rear and in our old camp at Bristo Station. They captured 500 prisoners and 5 pieces of artillery. We are now laying in rear of Battery C, 1st Rhode Island Light Artillery, as supports, and the men are building rifle pits. If Lee attacks us here, he will meet another Gettysburg defeat. Nothing but rebel cavalry have appeared as yet in our front. Last night, Captain Fred Barton of the 10th Massachusetts Volunteers and Acting Assistant Adjutant General of our brigade was captured with several wagons while on the road to Fairfax. We have been short of rations, and an ear of field corn roasted in the ashes tasted very good to me. Yet I am happy and feel well all the time. It is said that the 2nd Corps made a gallant fight, and that General Meade has issued an order congratulating them. Camp near Warrington, Virginia, October 21st, 1863. Last Monday morning, the entire army advanced, and today our regiment reached our old camp with the stone house. Since we were here, the 2nd and 11th Mississippi regiments have occupied our quarters, and they made things look bad. They burned up the seats we used for church gatherings and destroyed all of our boards. The rebels did not resist our advance except with cavalry, and our cavalry cleared the way for us. The people here seemed somewhat surprised to see us return. The game between Meade and Lee seems to me like a game of checkers, and Meade has had the last move. We do not know where the rebel army is, but I suppose General Meade does, and that is sufficient. I have been sick for a few days, not sick in bed, but feeling badly. Surgeon Carr, however, will, I reckon, fix me up again. Near Warrington, Virginia, October 24th, 1863. I am well again. Quinine did it. I suppose I must have taken a cold, but why a soldier should take cold, I cannot tell. Our regiment received new overcoats today. They came in time, for the nights are getting cold. We have had rain today, and life outside has not been pleasant. When the rebels occupied this camp, they cut down large oak trees and burned the trunks and used the branches for bed. A citizen told me that they were a noisy crowd and yelled all night. If pleasant tomorrow, we shall have a Sunday school, the first in some weeks, as our movements have prevented. Orders to move have just come, but they will probably be countermanded before morning. Near Warrington, October 27th, 1863, still in camp. I hardly think that our regiment will re-enlist. While several of the officers, I, for one, favor it, the men, as a rule, want to go home when their time expires, as one half must enlist again before they will send us home. I have no hope of going. It is growing cold very fast, and although our regiment is in stone huts, we find it difficult to keep warm. I have a huge fire of oak wood burning in my hut, but every time someone opens the blanket that serves as a door, I imagine myself at the North Pole. I suppose one reason why it is so cold here is we are so high up among the hills and mountains. We have been expecting an attack from the rebels, but so far they have only moved troops in our front. Yesterday, the rebel army crossed to this side of the Rapidan and advanced to within 5 miles of our lines, but after a cavalry fight, retired again. Sunday, we had our Sabbath school for the first time in 3 weeks. It was an interesting session. Chaplain Buglas preached a sermon to the regiment. I have entirely recovered my health. One day I rode at the government's expense in an ambulance. I never was in one but once before, and that was when I was a sergeant major on the Peninsular. Some of the officers ride quite often, but I prefer to walk with my men. Near Warrington, Virginia, October 29, 1863. All quiet along the lines except a few stray shots fired at pigs that attack our outposts. Then down comes an order from brigade headquarters threatening all sorts of punishment to men who persist in killing unoffending swine. Of course, we promised that if we should see any man killing a pig, we would stop him. But officers are like policemen and are never around while mischief is being done. General Terry reviewed our brigade yesterday. He complimented the 2nd Rhode Island on their fine appearance and marching. Saturday, we are to be mustered for pay. Chaplain Bugles is holding a meeting at the camp of the 7th Massachusetts Volunteers tonight. He is very obliging and is sought after by other regiments to preach. Near Warrington, Virginia, November 1st, 1863, Sunday, and we had to postpone our Sunday school as General Eustace, our brigade commander, took a notion to review our brigade. With 6 days in the week and nothing to do, I do not see why he should have selected Sunday. I doubt if he had any very good reason. Chaplain Bugles preached in the afternoon. After service, I borrowed Surgeon Carr's horse and rode down to Warrington. I called at the camp of Battery G, Rhode Island Artillery, and saw William and Gilbert Westcott. I see by the papers that First Lieutenant Arnold Rhodes Chase, my cousin, has been promoted captain in the New York Volunteers. He is a fine fellow and very popular in his company and regiment. Near Warrington, Virginia, November 3rd, 1863. It is said that Captain William B. Sears is to be major of the 14th Rhode Island Volunteers. The men are re-enlisting very slowly in our regiment, and we cannot foretell the results. I have had a good hut of timber built, but it is very uncertain as to our remaining here any length of time. November 5th, 1863. A plan of forming a new regiment in Rhode Island has been talked of. Lieutenant Colonel S.B.M. Reed is to be colonel, Major Henry C. Jenks is to be lieutenant colonel, and Captain Stephen H. Brown to be major. Lieutenant Colonel Reed called upon me today and offered me a captain's commission, with the privilege of selecting my own commissioned and non-commissioned officers. I am pleased with the idea, but have some doubts about its success. I shall soon have a captaincy here if I wait, for I have commanded a company for several months. Near Kelly's Ford, Rappahannock River, November 8, 1863. Thursday night, before leaving Warrington, Colonel Rogers sent for me and said that Adjutant William J. Bradford has been appointed an aide on General Wheaton's staff. The colonel offered to make me adjutant or captain just as I pleased. As an adjutant is allowed 2 horses and is a member of the regimental staff, I decided in favor of the horses, so goodbye sore feet for some time to come. I am delighted with these new promotions. This brings Surgeon Carr, Chaplain Bugles, and myself together now as staff officers, and Surgeon Carr and I tent together. Yesterday morning, the 7th, we left our camp at Warrington and marched to Rappahannock Station. Arriving at 3 p.m., skirmishers were deployed from the 1st Brigade of our division, and the fight began. It was hot for an hour, and shot and shell flew lively. The 2nd Division of our corps charged a rebel fort and captured it with 3 cannon and over 1,000 prisoners. Our brigade only lost 5 or 6 men. The scene was fine, for the fight took place just at sunset, and the fort was outlined against the sky. This morning, we moved to this place. Address your letters to Lieutenant E. H. Rhodes, Adjutant, 2nd Rhode Island Volunteers, 2nd Brigade, 3rd Division, 6th Corps, via Washington, D.C. Kelly's Ford, Virginia, November 10th, 1863. We are now guarding the ford, where we have 2 pontoon bridges down. The river is quite narrow at this point. Last night I took a ride into the country to try my horse. We found one house where they had milk for sale. The price was 35 cents per quart. We did not invest. In the fight at Rappahannock Station, our corps combined 2,000 prisoners and 4 guns. The old 6th Corps is well thought of now. I am now in a mess with Colonel Rogers and Chaplain Bugles. I like it very much. It seems like civilization to have a tent to sleep in. Of course, the adjutant's office work keeps me busy, but I like it and am happy. Near Hazel Run, Virginia, November 12, 1863. This morning we crossed the Rappahannock River at Kelly's Ford and moved to this place, which is about 8 miles from Culpeper. On our march, I had a chance to ride about the rebel forts that we captured a few days since. These works were built in this way and were very strong. General Sedgwick in his order states that the 6th Corps captured 600 prisoners, 130 commissioned officers, 2 brigade commanders, 4 cannon, 4 caissons filled with ammunition, 8 flags, 2,000 stands of arms, and 1 pontoon bridge, and all this with a lesser force than the rebels had. In one of the forts are buried 35 soldiers from the main regiments of our corps. Yesterday, before leaving Kelly's Ford, Colonel Rogers and I took a long ride over to some deserted rebel camps. Coming back, we followed the course of the Rappahannock River, and it made me a little homesick, for it resembles the Pawtuxet very much. It is growing cold fast, and the ground is frozen hard. Near Hazel Run, November 15th, 1863. Last night it rained, and as the weather is cold, we are far from being comfortable. Heavy firing is going on in our front, but we do not know the cause and are anticipating a battle somewhere on the Rapidan River. I bought myself a fine bay horse with a white mark on his face, and he can run like a deer. I call him Old Abe. Our camp is called Camp Sedgwick again. Camp Sedgwick, November 17th, 1863. Still in camp, and we have to keep huge fires burning in order to keep warm. Camp Sedgwick, November 19th, 1863, Sunday. Today, Captain Samuel J. English and I took a ride to Brandy Station, located on a railroad. I have bought another horse, a Canadian. He is tough and just the kind of beast I need for rough work. I call him Charlie. This evening we held a prayer meeting. About 150 men were present, and we had a good time. Yesterday, Chaplain Bugles and I took a ride and called upon the Honorable John Minor Botts, the Virginia statesman and Unionist. The rebels have persecuted him unmercifully and have put him in prison twice. He told us that a few days ago they arrested him again, but after taking him some miles, allowed him to return home. We enjoyed our talk with him very much. He was one time a member of Congress. He owns 2,200 acres of land. The rebels destroyed his place, leaving only the house, which is large, with pillars in front. Mr. Botts told us that during the last fight, the rebel General Rhodes posted a brigade and a battery in front of the house and notified him to move his family to a place of safety. Mr. Botts said he seated his family on the front porch and said to General Rhodes, "You have posted your troops so as to draw the Union fire upon my house and destroy it. This is my house, and if any of my family are hurt, I take the consequences, and you take the responsibility." He said, he added, "If you think you will be safer, you may get behind my pillars." He told us that the troops were moved out of the range of his house. Mr. Botts treated us well and urged us to call again. Camp Sedgwick, November 24th, 1863. Last night, orders came for us to move, and this morning we are all packed and ready. It is raining, and we all live in mud, sleep in mud, and almost eat in mud. We have no idea of where we are to go and can only surmise. I have fine times now when we are in camp and find the field and staff officers congenial spirits. The Colonel, Rogers, is very kind to me, and we get on together in good shape. 2nd Rhode Island Volunteers, December 3rd, 1863, Camp Sedgwick, Virginia, Thursday. We left our camp Thursday, November 26th, and marched to Jacob's Ford on the Rapidan River, and at dark crossed on a pontoon bridge without opposition from the enemy, who withdrew as we advanced. Friday, we followed the 3rd Corps, and a battle was fought. The 6th Corps acted as a reserve, and beyond some artillery firing, took no part in the fight. The rebels moved on again during the night, and the next morning, Saturday, November 28th, we followed. Just before dark, we came upon their line of defense at Mine Run, and our batteries were placed in position, and fire opened. The rebels replied in good style, and for a while there was music in the air. Several English officers visiting the army went up to the front to see the fight, but when the shells began to burst around them, they went to the rear. I did not blame them, for I should have been glad to go myself. The boys had lots of sport out of this incident. We lay here in the mud all night, and the next morning, Sunday, November 29th, we moved to the left of the line. Our division, commanded by General Terry, was for a time attached to the 2nd Corps, commanded by General G.K. Warren. We marched past Robertson's Tavern and then took the Plank Road and moved to a position about 10 miles from Orange Courthouse. Here we formed line of battle and waited events. The rebel General Stuart with his cavalry got into our rear, and all of our cavalry was sent in pursuit. This country is called the Wilderness, and it is well named, for it is all woods and swamp. Just at dark, as the 2nd Rhode Island was getting into position, the rebels opened upon us with 3 batteries, their shells passing over us. Here we lay down and tried to sleep. Monday, November 30th, we were ordered to make an attack on the rebel forts at 8 a.m. We advanced, and 100 men from the 2nd Rhode Island were detailed as skirmishers. Before the skirmishers could be deployed, the rebels came down upon the left flank of our regiment, but we soon drove them back. Knapsacks and blankets were piled in heaps, and we waited all day for the order to attack, but it did not come. I had a good view of the rebel forts, and they appeared to be very strong. Bullets from the picket line of the enemy would at times sing over us, and the situation was not a pleasant one. Our mess servant found a house, and what was better, a turkey. This they roasted, and with sweet potatoes and new bread and butter, they appeared to us about 2 p.m. Colonel Rogers invited Colonel Johns of the 10th Massachusetts to dine with us. The good things were spread upon a rubber blanket, and we gathered around. The chaplain began to say grace when, bang, went a gun, and a shell from the enemy howled over our heads. The chaplain did not falter, but went on with his prayer. When 2 more shells struck near our horses, we lay close to the ground until he had finished, when I called for my orderly to move my horse. The shells coming nearer and nearer, we took the rubber blanket by its corners and moved under a knoll, where we enjoyed a feast. Our batteries soon got to work, and our dinner was eaten while the artillery duel went on. At dark, our division was again moved to a new position, where we remained until Tuesday, December 1st, 9 o'clock p.m., when we started for the Rapidan River to return to camp. The weather was bitter cold, and to ride far was out of the question, for one would fall off his horse by reason of being sleepy. I missed the Colonel, Rogers, once during the night, which was moonlight, and remembering that he had stopped at a brook to water his horse, I rode back to see him. I found him sitting upon his horse in the middle of a brook, and both horse and rider were fast asleep. I woke up the Colonel, and we rejoined the regiment. The roads had been very muddy and much cut up by our wagon train. When the mud froze, it left the roads in horrible condition for marching. However, in order to keep awake, I led my horse a good part of the night. Wednesday morning at daylight, we recrossed the Rapidan at Ely's Ford and marched to within 30 miles of Brandy Station. This made a tramp of 30 miles from the battlefield, and the men are used up. Thursday, December 3rd, we moved 3 miles to this camp. I do not understand the late movements, but I presume General Meade does, and that is sufficient for me. Camp Sedgwick, Virginia, December 21st, 1863. We are quiet in our winter quarters, and the men have built huts of logs, and we are very comfortable. At the regimental headquarters, we have quite a village of huts arranged for comfort and convenience. I have a hut for the adjutant's office, and Sergeant Major George F. Easterbrooks sleeps in the rear. Surgeon Carr and I occupy a hut together, while the Colonel and Chaplain Bugles try to keep each other warm. We drill when the weather will permit, and sleep and smoke when it storms. We have received a number of recruits and about 100 drafted men who look a little lonesome. Lieutenant Colonel Reed, who was promoted from Captain of Company I, is absent on staff duty, and Major Henry C. Jenks is acting as Lieutenant Colonel. Tonight we have had a meeting of the officers to decide whether we are willing to remain in service after June 5th, 1864. The following have agreed to stay: Captains Henry H. Young, Joseph McIntyre, John P. Shaw, Adjutant Elisha H. Rhodes, Lieutenants Edmund F. Prentice, and Thorndike J. Smith. Lieutenant Samuel Russell will probably stay, I decided without hesitation. The United States needs the services of her sons. I am young and in good health, and I feel that I owe a duty to my country. I entered the Army as a private, expecting that the war would end in a few months. It has dragged along, and no one can tell when the end will come. But when it does come, I want to see it, and so I am going to stay. I like a soldier's life, and without egotism, I think I can say that I am doing some service. If I should go home, I should be unhappy and want to come back. In fact, I should seek service in some other regiment. Our regiment is a good one, and I prefer it to any other. So goodbye, homesickness. I am going, if God wills, to see the end of this wicked rebellion. Several of the men have already re-enlisted, and we shall have enough to form a good battalion. Kate, from a painting by Mrs. Elisha H. Rhodes, Camp Sedgwick, Virginia, December 25th, 1863. This is Christmas Day, and the third one I have passed in the Army. I have enjoyed a good long ride on my new horse, Kate. I traded old Abe for her, and think I have one of the finest horses in the Army. She is a beauty and very fast, both running and trotting. I gave a dinner to a party of officers, and we tried to celebrate Christmas in a becoming manner. December 31st, 1863. The year is ended. Goodbye, 1863, and may God grant that success attend our labors for our country in the year so soon to open. That concludes the 8th part of the story. Thank you very much for listening. Please subscribe for more episodes and leave a comment.